Okay, so how does a band stick around for more than 50 years? You'd probably guess, stability, the same lineup, a sound people can rely on, right? Well, King Crimson basically did the exact opposite. They managed to survive for 5 decades by constantly breaking up. I'm serious. They were always changing memories, completely tearing down their sound and rebuilding it. It's this incredible paradox, isn't it? The only thing that was constant about them was change. So how on earth did they pull that off? Let's dive in and find out.
And this quote, this is it. This is the key to the whole thing. It's from the band's founder, and really its only constant member, the guitarist Robert Fripp. He says King Crimson is more a way of doing things, and that says it all. It means King Crimson isn't just a bunch of guys in a band. No, it's a philosophy, it's a method, a process for making music that is always pushing forward, always uncompromising. And it was all driven by Fripp's unique, singular vision.
All right, so let's set the scene. We're going back to 1969, an absolutely massive year, right? You've got Woodstock, you've got the moon landing, but while all that was going on, there was this other kind of big bang happening over in London. And King Crimson, they didn't just show up to the party, they basically invented a whole new kind of party.
And when I say big bang, I mean it. Their rise was just meteoric. Think about this. They have their first rehearsal in January. Just 6 months later, they're playing in Hyde Park for 500,000 people, opening for the Rolling Stones. It was absolutely explosive. Then by October, their debut album, In the Court of the Crimson King, is out. And then by December, the original band was gone. Just like.
And that album? Wow. It was a seismic event in music. You gotta remember what rock sounded like back then. Pretty much everything was built on a foundation of the blues. King Crimson just took that entire rule book and threw it out the window. They started weaving in all this other stuff, complex jazz chords, classical arrangements, these huge symphonic sounds. So this wasn't just another album. It was basically the blueprint for an entire new genre we now call progressive rock.
I mean, the sheer range on this one album is just mind-blowing. On one end of the spectrum, you've got 21st Century Schizoid Man, a track so intense and precise that a lot of people call it the first proto-metal song. It's just this ferocious critique of the Vietnam War. And then on the complete other end, you have songs like Epitaph. They use this amazing instrument called the mellotron. It's basically a keyboard that plays tape recordings of real orchestral instruments to build these massive, sweeping, almost apocalyptic soundscapes. It's just wild.
So they're at the absolute peak of their success. The album's a hit, everyone loves them, and what do? They break up. The original lineup just dissolves. And this is the crucial part. It wasn't a failure. It was a deliberate choice. And right there, they set the pattern that would define King Crimson for the next 50 years. The art always, always comes before commercial success.
So that brings us to the next chapter, or really, a whole series of chapters. Because this is where King Crimson truly becomes a musical chameleon. Robert Fripp just starts assembling new lineups, exploring totally different sonic worlds, and then disassembling them when he's done.
Okay, so fast forward a few years into the early 70s. Fripp puts together a new lineup, and the sound is just, well, they called it a flying brick wall, and that's exactly what it was. This version of the band was aggressive, super complex, and really into European free improv. The engine room for this sound? The insane rhythm section of John Wetton on bass and Bill Bruford on drums, who, get this, had just quit the massive band Yes to come play this crazy music.
Man, this version of the band was all about pushing boundaries. Take the albums Starless and Bible Black. A huge chunk of that record was actually built from live improvisations that they then took into the studio and edited together. Their last album from this period, Red, is just an absolute monster. It's a masterpiece of heavy, proto-metal intensity. And then, guess what happened? Yep, Fripp did it again. Broke up the band. He called it a dinosaur that had just run its course.
So after that, Fripp goes quiet for 7 years. Then, boom, it's the 80s, and King Crimson is back. But the band that came back was almost unrecognizable. Fripp and Bruford were still there, but now they had 2 incredible American musicians with them, Tony Levin on bass and Adrian Belew on guitar. And in the middle of all the post-punk and new wave happening, they looked to Indonesian gamelan music for inspiration. The result was this super precise, cyclical sound that was just unlike anything else out there.
And the gear they were using was just on another level. You had Fripp and Belew playing these incredibly fast, interlocking guitar patterns that just weave in and out of each other like a high-tech tapestry. And then you've got Tony Levin playing the Chapman stick, this wild instrument that's part bass, part guitar. Oh, and he also invented funk fingers, which are literally little drumstick tips he puts on his fingers to get this crazy percussive bass sound. All that together,
That's what created their signature rock Gamelan style.
Okay, so the 80s version runs its course. We jump forward another decade to the mid-90s, and Fripp is back with what might be his most ambitious lineup yet. He calls it the Double Trio. Yeah, you heard that right. 6 members, 2 guitarists, 2 bass and stick players, and 2 drummers. The sound was just immense. It was heavy, it was industrial, it was pure, controlled chaos.
So, what happens when a 6-headed monster like that hits a creative roadblock? Well, if you're Robert Fripp, you don't just break it up this time, you fractalize it. That was his word for it. He split the band into these smaller little subgroups called projects. Think of them like R&D departments for the band, little musical labs where they could cook up new ideas to bring back to the main group. See? It's that core philosophy again. It's not a band, it's a way of doing things.
Okay, so we've seen what the band did through all these different phases. But to really get King Crimson, we need to understand why they did it. What was the philosophy, the big idea behind all these constant, chaotic-seeming changes?
Well, it really boils down to this one core concept Fripp had, the SIM unit. That stands for a small, independent, mobile, and intelligent unit. See, Fripp basically believed that the old model of the giant rock supergroup was just obsolete. It was a dinosaur. The reason he kept breaking up the band was to keep it small and nimble so it could survive what he called the vampiric music industry without getting eaten alive. King Crimson was his perfect SIM unit.
And if you were going to be in that unit, Fripp expected you to master 3 core disciplines. First, the discipline of the hands. That's your technical skill. You had to be a virtuoso. Second, the discipline of the head. You needed the smarts to understand and play this incredibly complex music. And finally, the discipline of the heart. You had to be able to connect emotionally with the music and with the audience. For Robert Fripp, if you didn't have all 3 of those, you couldn't properly serve the music. And at the end of the day, the music was the only thing that mattered.
So, all of this, all these breakups, all these new lineups, this whole philosophy, it all leads to the band's final incarnation. And this one might just be the most definitive version of King Crimson ever. It's like they took their entire sprawling history and decided to forge it into one final grand statement.
Starting in 2014, the band came back as what they called a 7-headed beast. It eventually grew to 8 members. And they did something I've never seen any other band do. They put their 3 drummers at the front of the stage. Not tucked away in the back like usual, nope, right up front, creating this incredible visual and this absolutely thunderous orchestral wall of percussion.
And here's the thing about this final lineup. It wasn't about writing new songs. It was a celebration. They went back and reinterpreted their entire 50-year catalog, reworking all these classic tunes for that insane 3-drummer setup. They were playing stuff that hadn't been heard on a stage in over 40 years. Fripp himself said it was the best band I've been in. And then, in 2021, they took their final bow, moving, in his words, from sound to silence.
So after all that, what is the legacy of this strange, brilliant, constantly changing band? Well, the truth is, it's everywhere. And sometimes it's in the last place you'd expect to find it. I mean, check this out. In 2010, Kanye West built his massive hit song Power around a huge sample of their 1969 track 21st Century Schizoid Man. Just like that, King Crimson's DNA was injected into a whole new generation.
And their influence really is just vast. They literally laid the foundation for all of progressive rock. All those complex rhythms and weird time signatures, that was a direct line to what we now call math rock. And their heavier stuff, from the album Red all the way to their later work, was a huge inspiration for huge progressive metal bands like Tool, Primus, and Dream Theater.
Which, brings us right back to where we started. The band itself may have moved from sound to silence. But if King Crimson was never really just a group of musicians, if it was always, like Robert Fripp said, a way of doing things, well, then you have to ask, can an idea like that, a philosophy of constant, relentless innovation, ever really be over?